Today we're going to make this amazing potato and cheddar cheese soup, and you don't want to miss this. You know, families have their favorite recipes, and my family has a lot of favorite soup recipes, and I'm going to share one of our very favorite ones with you today. We serve this with a little bit of pickled jalapenos if you like it a little spicy, some bread or some croutons, and some cheddar cheese on the top, but we'll save that for later. Let's get started. This recipe, I'm using whatever potatoes I have on hand. I had a few white potatoes and a few golden potatoes. On my stove on medium heat, I have a large soup pot with about 2 tablespoons of butter, and I'm going to prep my vegetables. I have 2 carrots I'm going to peel and chop, 1 large onion, and 2 to 3 stalks of celery, depending on the size. I also grabbed some of those nice green celery leaves and chop those up and throw them in for flavor. Now, this recipe calls for about 3 to 4 cloves of garlic. Mine were pretty small, so I actually crushed a little extra garlic. But in my pot, I have, like I said, 2 tablespoons of butter that I'm melting, medium low. Add the onion, add the celery, put the lid on it, and let it start to get soft. In the meantime, I'm going to crush my garlic and set that aside, and I'm going to wait until my onions and my celery are getting a little bit soft, and then I'm going to add the carrots, and then we're going to add the garlic and mix all that in. Now, it depends on how much garlic you like. We like a lot of garlic. You can use less if you like, or if you don't like it, you can omit it, but we like a lot of garlic in our house, so you want to also pick out any garlic that's left in that garlic press and throw all that in. One thing I really love about this recipe is you don't cook the potatoes separately and then add them to the soup. You actually are we're going to cook those potatoes right in the pot with chicken broth, not with water. So we'll get to that in a second, but you can see I mixed in my carrots and my garlic, and now I'm going to add a teaspoon of chili powder. And you can also add a little bit extra. Like, I'm making a lot of soup. I might actually go and taste it later and add a little extra, but like I said, I'm using both white and yellow potatoes, the golden. I had kind of a half a bag of each, so I like to use what I have on hand. And I've already made this soup with just the white potatoes. I've also made it with just the yellow potatoes, and it's delicious either way. So there I am with my giant pile of peels, and I like to peel my potatoes and I rinse them off, and then I chop them, and I'm going to dice them actually, and then I'm going to throw them into the pot. And I do at least 2 pounds of potatoes, probably closer to 3 because I'm using a real big soup pot, and I'm just going to cut them the same way I would as when I make mashed potatoes. I don't cut them too small, not too large, kind of like in the middle. Now, you can take some of this soup and you can kind of puree it if you like. You can put it in a blender, emulsifier, and some people like it very creamy. I don't do that because I like to put the carrots in, and I like the pieces of potatoes and carrots in my soup, but that's an option that you can do as well. Now, you'll find that when you have this the next day, obviously the potato is going to break down a bit and it's just going to be thicker and creamier. So you can see my veggies are all cooked very well, and I'm adding my potatoes. And once you add your potatoes, you're going to add chicken broth. I like to use the 32-ounce containers of chicken stock or chicken broth, and I will put the entire recipe right down below in the description for you, so make sure you check that out. But what I like to do is I like to add enough chicken broth to cover my potatoes, and then about an inch or 2 more above that. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn this on to simmer. We're going to bring it up to a boil and then turn it down to a simmer, and we're going to cook the potatoes in the soup with the chicken broth. And what great flavor. And I always like to keep a lot of chicken broth on hand at home, that and beef stock, beef broth, because I use that a lot for when I'm make beef barley soup, or when I'm making Swedish meatballs, or, those types of things. So one of the things I always get at the grocery store is tons of beef and chicken broth. But I'm going to prep my jalapenos now for a garnish. Now, I like to use fresh jalapenos. I'm going to cut it very, very thin, and sometimes I will cut them also in quarters. I kind of quarter the jalapeno and then I dice it like I'm showing you there. And I'm going to put them in a small container. I like to save little plastic containers from when I get dip or something at the grocery store. They're great for storing onions and jalapenos, and I like to use them as much as I can so we can recycle those containers. Make the pickled jalapenos. This is something I don't really measure, but I will put the recipe down below for you. So I chopped up 1 jalapeno and then it wasn't enough, so I added another half, and I'm going to put that into my plastic container, and I'm going to gather some lime juice. And if you don't have lime juice, you can use lemon, but lime is best. And it doesn't matter if it's fresh squeezed limes or if you just have lime juice in a container, either will do. I'm also going to use some coarse kosher salt, and you can use regular salt, whatever you have, sprinkle that on top, and about a half a teaspoon of salt, and then I'm going to put a few tablespoons of the lime juice on top. They don't have to be completely like drowning in lime juice, but they should be nice and wet. I'm going to mix that up really well, and then you want to add a little bit of sweet to it. So you can add a teaspoon of sugar, or I add about 1 to 2 teaspoons of honey. My honey has gotten very thick, so I had to use a knife. I don't waste anything. I use all of it, and I'm going to put that in, and I'm going to use a fork to mix it up just to dissolve up that honey, and I'm going to kind of flatten out the jalapenos so they're all kind of submerged, and then put the lid on and set that aside. And that is a great garnish for your soup. If you like spicy things like we do in our house, just 1 or 2 of those little pieces of jalapeno really gives it a really great zip in the end, a really great added flavor. So we've made our jalapenos, and now I'm gonna get my cheese ready. I'm gonna use about 2 cups of shredded cheddar cheese, and then a little bit extra that I'm gonna set aside that you can use for a garnish. And while the soup is cooking, I'm going to stir it occasionally, and we're gonna test the potatoes with a fork, just like you would if you're making mashed potatoes. Test them with a fork and make sure that they're soft. Then I'm going to measure 1 cup of whole milk. You can also use half and half. I'm going to slowly add the cheese into the soup and stir it in till it's all dissolved, and then add the milk to it as well. And then as you can see, I bring it to a boil, and then I turn it down to a slow simmer, and it's ready to eat whenever you are. I love to serve it with the pickled jalapenos, and like I said, the next day it's going to be a lot thicker because the potatoes are going to break down, but you can blend some of it if you like and add it back into the soup if you like it thick right away. So add some of those pickled jalapenos, some fresh bread. I have a recipe I just put up on YouTube for homemade baguettes. It's a fabulous recipe that I make with my French onion soup, which you can also find on my channel. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, and let's see what we have baking in the oven for dessert. Hello, Dolly bars. 7-layer bars. Aren't they amazing? Maybe I'll share that recipe next time. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you then. Bye, guys.